evening, everyone. It is February 10th, 2026 at 5:30 p.m. and we are in the PDR room in the Cauga Heights Schools, and I'm calling to order the Cauga Heights Board of Education special meeting. Will the treasurer please call the roll?
Mrs. Deca?
Here.
Ms. Pajeska?
Here.
Mr. Rossi?
Here.
Mr. Souchaki?
Here, 4 present, none absent. On behalf of the board, I would like to welcome all students, staff, parents, and interested community members to tonight's Board of Education meeting. The board values and encourages public comment on education issues. Anyone having an interest in the actions of the board may participate during the public comments portion of the meeting. If so, please identify yourself on the board sign-in sheet, and a copy of the board meeting agenda is available for review on our website. We do ask that you silence your cell phones during the meeting, and now please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'll accept a motion for to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Deca.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
We are recommending that we pull off items 5 and 6 that's related to the next phase of the roofing project. We do not have a complete contract from Centimark yet. Our attorneys have been exchanging documents back and forth. We're down to one section. So they're making their money right now. It might take us another couple of days. So we anticipate that should be on the agenda for the 17th.
Okay.
It's not changing any dollar figures. It all just has to do with some language that school districts have to fulfill that is inconsistent with what they're asking us to do.
Okay, so we'll remove 5 and 6. Any other discussion? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll on the modified agenda.
Mrs. Deca?
Aye.
Ms. Pajeska?
Aye.
Mr. Rossi?
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki?
Aye, motion passes 4-0. Moving on to section 4 presentations, I'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Muccio.
Thank you, Mr. Souchaki. So tonight, we are going to be reviewing our February financial forecast. It used to be the 5-year forecast, but the state of Ohio last year recently modified that. So no longer is it 5 years, it's now, think of it as 4 years. The goal today is going to be to present the forecast and have it be done by 7 p.m. So just going in, maybe even shorter than that. Anytime there are questions by anybody here, feel free. Let's have open dialogue, make it, relaxed, laid back. Matt, chime in, anytime you want to. Also, too, I just wanted to point out that, nobody knows the future, except if you have one of these. So this is the almanac from Back to the Future. So, unless you do have one of these in real time, you cannot predict what's going to happen. So in the financial forecast, everything here is our best guess. And, even the smallest of sections we talk about and we go through it. I mean, Matt, we spent like an hour talking about one line of the 5-year forecast, just trying to
Make sense of it.
Make sense of it. So, we do go through this quite often. This is our roadmap, the notes. So everything in here, this contains the budget for the general fund for everybody, as well as, just kind of our history for revenue and expenditures. This was used to figure out, potential errors that occurred with Cuyahoga County. And we'll talk about that more too. So this is a living document. It's updated twice a year, and it's used by us, daily, I want to say.
It's uploaded to the state as well.
Yep. We upload this to the state, and, just going into the, first page of the notes here, let's take a look. And I'd like to go through the notes first, because those drive what we put on the lines that we have in place. So everybody has a copy in front of them, paper clipped together. And if we go to our first page, again, I'm not going to go too fast through it, but the first page talks about the introduction. It talks about functionally, school districts may think of the change as a shift to a 4-year submission. So the current budget year plus 3 forecasted years. So we're going to see fiscal year '26, which is our current year, and then 3 years after, '27, '28, and '29, on this new 4-year forecast, modified from the 5-year forecast. The forecast is used for a couple of reasons down here. Number one, to engage the local Board of Education and the community in long-range planning and discussions of financial issues facing the school district, to serve as a basis for determining the school district's ability to sign the certificate required by ORC, which is 575.412, commonly known as the 412 certificate. And that's just saying that funds are available according to your 5-year forecast for certain high-priced contracts, salary schedules, and collective bargaining agreements that are in place, negotiated agreements. So essentially, if there weren't any money, let's say in our 2nd year, 3rd year, 4th year, we couldn't sign a 3-year collective bargaining agreement with raises because we can't certify that the revenue is available for all of those years of the forecast. So, and the collective bargaining agreement. And then it's to provide, number 3, a method for the Department of Education and Workforce and Auditor of State to identify school districts with potential financial problems, which they do often. Again, this forecast presents to the best of our knowledge and belief the expected revenues and expenditures and the operating balance of the general fund. So we go through this pretty thoroughly. I would say for me, I've been doing this more than 10 years, 2 a year. And when I was at Coventry, they had financial problems. So my first day there, I signed on. They just didn't have zero cash, but negative cash, and I had to lead them through fiscal emergency. So I did a number of forecasts at Coventry, as well as 2 a year. So I'm pushing probably 30 forecasts at this point right now. The notes here, I don't use any type of software. It's just a blank canvas, and I started from Microsoft Word and put everything in here. So everything's just been an accumulation of just, years of doing this. As we go, the second page, we're going to see our table of contents. If we want to hop anywhere. There are 91 pages of data in here, and it's good data that we all use. And again, more or less the second half is going to be the budgets that the principals and teachers and maintenance staff, all staff use that we have for our general fund. Going on to our third page, this talks about the nature of the forecast, and again, highlighting the fact that the 412 certificate is required by the treasurer, superintendent, and president Board of Education. So that's what we sign periodically. From time to time, whenever we do appropriations, certain contracts that are high price, salary schedules, and other obligations that meet that threshold. The budgetary process, as we work with the Budget Commission, and just to kind of recap this, what it talks about is that we do by January 20th of each year a tax budget. It's a modified one by Cuyahoga County. And then from there, Cuyahoga County uses that data to craft certificate of estimated resources that they issue to us around March. And then we kind of lead in with our next fiscal year ending June 30th, starting July 1st for that budget. Go into the next page, beginning on page 5. So these next couple pages talk about the specific category and line numbers in the 5-year forecast. So it talks about line 1.010, which is the general property tax real estate. And then we have revenue codes that correspond with it. And that's coming from the USAS manual, Uniform School Accounting System that they have in place. Going to the next page, page 6. Again, we're looking at now expenditures, second half. So we're not looking at receipt codes for revenue, but rather object codes for expenditures. So personnel, at the top of the page, line 3.010 is going to be all 100 object codes. That's why we see a 100 through 199. Benefits and retirement would be a 200 object code. 400 is purchase services. Pop quiz, who knows what supplies and materials is without looking? 500. 500 object code. Capital outlay is 600 object code. And then we keep transfers, advances as we go. Not only that, but when you get into those, 100s or 200s, 400s, they're broken out. So 423 is going to be maintenance and repair. 418 could be legal costs. So you're really pinpointing within those specific object codes, it drills down. And again, that's all coming from the state of Ohio. They created all this with that USAS manual that they have in place. And actually, they haven't updated it for, I want to say, greater than 10 years, maybe 13 years, until very recently, the middle of last year, is one of the first updates that they've had. So they actually did some pretty substantial adjustments. So it's really confined to the 400 and 500 object codes when they were switching up descriptions that we have. So bottom of page 6, this is really important. So this line 6.010. So if we were to have financial problems and the state would come in, either the auditor of state, and I used to be an auditor, or ODE, they would say focus on that line 6.010. So you're pretty much always going to hear that if you ever listen to any big presentation on the forecast. This just talks about the over-under. So if you're deficit spending, that's going to be negative on that line in any of the years that would be. If it's positive, it's a surplus. So you just want to be careful and mindful about too many negatives and too many columns or years on that line 6.010, because if you have too many, it drives the school district down. And as Matt knows, there are numerous school districts that have those financial problems.
Yep.
A lot in Summit County, some in Cuyahoga County.
Yeah.
So, and they're dealing with it right now.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that on Friday during our professional development day, just a few of those struggling districts, what the ramifications are. Elyria, for example, look at $11 million in cuts. Barberton's $9 million in debt. They're in real trouble,
Yeah.
and that just means pretty deep cuts, cutting programs, closing buildings, laying off people. So,
And really, you want to look at the forecast as the tool to never get to that point. So both of those schools have different issues. So Elyria had a levy that failed, I want to say twice. So they've kind of known and they've tried, but if a levy fails, too much, at some point you have to start making cuts. So that's Elyria's issue that they're working through. As opposed to Barberton, their forecast was just materially wrong. Incorrect assumptions, incorrect accounting, dealing with grant funds. So that forecast was just materially wrong. And
they knew in 2019 they were going to be in trouble, and
levy
when-
imminent.
yeah, and then when
Yep.
the shutdown happened and everybody got these huge pots of federal dollars
For COVID, that's
for
that's-
COVID, it allowed districts to offset some of that, and they never came out of that adjusting for the fact that those dollars would eventually be used up. You may have hired staff that was funded with federal grants that now you're absorbing the cost of as a school district. Just a lot of mistakes in leadership there, unfortunately.
I think the state said something in the ballpark of approximately 30 or 40 schools had messed up their grants, in essence, that they were, people get paid out of the general fund. Sometimes you can use grant funds to cover those costs. Grant funds are 500 level funds from the federal government. The ESSER was 507. That's the fund number. But as Matt's referring to, some of these schools use the federal money to essentially cover those general fund expenses, pushing a levy off. Problem is, they kind of messed it up on the accounting side. They didn't have a map of anything, didn't have, the proper numbers, and they got caught off guard. So when the grants ran dry, and now everybody had to jump back to the general fund, oh no, the cliff is right there, because all these expenses, come into play that they didn't necessarily account for with other expenses, and now they're looking at a fiscal cliff. So that is what happened with Barberton. So, as we keep going, so we're looking at 7, 8, and then 9 is going to be the forecast embedded in. So if anybody loses it, you can just refer back to here. And we're in a good spot, I would say. Yeah. Yeah, so we're in a good spot. You know, you can go on OD's website, and we could look at other schools right now and just see where they're at with their forecast. Every school in the state, approximately 600, have their forecasts up there. You know, if we look at our line 6.010, we can see that, you know, in the past couple of years, fiscal year '23 and '24, we've had surpluses. Now, we did have a deficit last year, negative 3.1 million, and that was primarily due to the fact that we did a strategic approach with transferring $4 million out of our general fund to our permanent improvement fund. Matt, do you want to touch base on that?
If you recall, there was a cash carryover cap that made its way into House Bill 96. It was a 40% cash cap. Had that not been, well, first of all, at the time we transferred that on June 30th, which was the last day of the fiscal year, it had not been overturned, or sorry, it had not been vetoed by the governor, we would have lost $8 million had that veto not come. So we strategically kind of split the difference and put $4 million into a PI account that was tied to our capital improvement fund. And then we retained the other $4 million, and there was a loophole that would have allowed us to preserve both at 11:15, and it really didn't come out till after midnight, which would have been too late to act. We could have been here at 11:59. We wouldn't have known that the governor was vetoing that provision. All right? He vetoed it. And what we didn't know was whether there was going to be an overturn of the veto. And keep in mind that veto can be overturned until December 31st of this calendar year, 2026. They could wait until the next election of governor and decide to overturn the veto, and that 40% cash carryover goes back into effect. So it was extremely strategic on a lot of people's part as to why we did what we did, the amount that we did, and the options we would still have should that veto get overridden by the state legislature later on this year. So it was a way to preserve $8 million. And keep in mind, it was as low as 25%, which would have been upwards of over $10 million to $12 million. We would have lost overnight.
Yeah. So that was the strategic approach that we used back in fiscal year '25, and that's why we see a deficit of $3 million. Keep in mind that we had a surplus, a natural surplus that ate into that $4 million transfer out. So, you know, we're trying to, you know, again, balance our budget as much as we can. This year in '26, we're looking at a deficit on line 6 of $45,000 currently at the moment. Again, you know, the state switched it up, so no longer are we doing this forecast in May when we're almost closing the fiscal year, because the fiscal year ends June 30th, but rather now we're doing it in February, and I'm using December, January figures, which is basically half a year. So, you know, knock on wood that, you know, things kind of stay as they are, but, you know, surprises always come, so we never know. You know, I think we were joking we're going to start seeing leaks because all the snow melting, because it's 40 degrees now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, that doesn't happen, but again, you
I
know,
bet we come out in the positive. I don't think in reality you'll see that negative in this year. It's just like he's saying, he's using numbers based on now. We still have 5 months of the fiscal year to go.
And I'm usually more, you know, held back and reserved when it comes to budgeting. So I'm not aggressive with it. You know, I always plan for, in essence, worst case scenarios, or, you know, hedging that, okay, we have a couple bubbles here. You know, if something does go wrong, I can use that bubble, you know, which is a positive bubble that I, you know, shift throughout the forecast. I have numerous ones there. So if something is unexpected, you know, I have some bubbles there that I know that are going to counter that as we go. So, again, our cash, I feel we're in a good spot relative to other school districts in Cuyahoga County. But we just have to, you know, truthfully watch this like a hawk. I mean, you know, this is our, you know, without our finances, we can't do anything. We can't keep the lights on, we can't teach. So,
And when they were looking at the cash carryover balances, they were using the line 7.010, correct? And they were dividing it by line 1.070. That's where they were getting those percentages. Is that correct?
the total expenditures.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, yeah,
And-
total expenditures,
Right.
sorry. Yep,
But.
4.50.
And we talk about this too, between us, along with the admin team, that, you know, again, we just have to watch the finances, and especially the 5-year forecast like a hawk. So, It's a great tool. I really like using it over the years. I thought, before the time periods were good, that we had them in place, and I thought the 5 years were good. Again, the state, deleted a whole column, a whole fiscal year, so it's now 4 years, and they adjusted the timeframes. So we'll see how these adjustments work out, but, the tool is good, the forecast, so.
Matt, I have
Yep.
a quick question. Line 6 being all red, is that raising any flags with the state?
It doesn't yet. If our, bottom 3 lines, bottom line were to be negative, that would bring in the state. So the state would look at us and say, and if I flip back, so if we look, so on the first page at the very bottom, the Department of Education, in the red stripe that we have there, the Department of Education and Workforce examines all forecast submissions. If the department determines a district has the potential to incur a deficit during the first 3 years of the submission, on those lines, the district will be required to submit a written plan to eliminate the flag deficits. So they're looking at those bottom lines and saying, are there any deficits in those 3 years? So if our year 28 had a negative on line 15 or line 12 or line 10, those bottom 3, the state would come in and say, we need you to eliminate that deficit that you have in place. So we're spending down our cash, which, the state feels is good. The state feels we shouldn't have a lot of cash as the cash carryover. They're coming out and saying you should have, maybe 25%, not, enough for a rainy day, but almost nothing. It's not really the way it works, in practice. But no, we are, we just have to be mindful that, this is a very just reserved forecast, and we're planning, if the worst case scenarios happen, but we're thinking it's gonna be more favorable from the outcomes that we have in place. So even though we see those deficits on line 6, we think that we have, aspects that can overcome those.
So if it was still the 5-year forecast, you would have fiscal year 2030.
Which we have.
Would that number be in the red, you anticipate, just based on,
Probably.
that probably would be in the red, then which then would trigger the need for a levy.
But this crafts our overall, just
Yeah.
direction that we go, and, once we get too low, then we start talking about, is it time to discuss a levy? How many years has it been since the last levy? Just what programs do we have? So I think it's just a review of everything, but we're, constantly doing that on a, a daily basis, I want to say. So we're always mindful of it. I don't think a week goes by that we don't talk about this in some serious way with something going on. So, again, I think had the cash carryover never come into play and we were just naturally doing local control and using, maybe some of those funds for roofing needs, we'd be in an even stronger position. But again, that was the state coming out and saying that, they wanted to, take some aspects of local control away. But, no, I feel our forecast is good for a number of years, and, we'll just, again, be mindful, always watching it, and, have those conversations, well in advance before they ever, get serious for us. Luckily, in the past, I've been here 8 years, give or take, and we have not talked about any type of reductions in programs, we've not talked about reductions in staff. If anything, we've added, programs, we've added a second foreign language,
Well, and you're also implementing a lot of initially partially funded state mandates. You take something like the science of reading. They gave us, $15,000 for high-quality instructional materials, but we spent $100,000 on high-quality instructional materials as required by law, and those all have renewals. But they have to be implemented, but then the funding is only temporary. So, and that's just one example of many, many different things that we have to comply with.
I have 2 questions.
Oh, yeah.
So you said we're looking at the bottom 3 lines. Can you just, are we looking, you said you primarily look at the bottom 3. So is that 10, 12, and 15? Or what do you mean by the?
Yeah, 10, 12, and 15. I look at everything. So,
Right.
But yeah, the bottom 3 is what the state would come in and look at, and say, this, and really the separation is just, when it comes to, revenue like 11 and 13, when new levies or renewal levies would come into play. That's really the only separation between those lines. But the state just says, for line 12, that's what you use for your certification of contracts, salary schedules, and other obligations. And the very bottom line is just your unreserved balance, just
Okay.
at the end of the day that you would have. Sometimes the state looks at it and says for renewal levies, they have this weird guideline, I guess you can call it, where they say you can throw it in the forecast and they kind of assume renewals will pass. So you can use a renewal for signing off on salary schedules and collective bargaining agreements. But on line 13, it's not renewals, that's new property tax or income tax levies. So they make sure that you can't certify those large-scale items going off of a new levy. So they'll let you look at it from a lens of, oh, renewal will pass, but a new levy won't. And that's really the only difference between those lines.
So 11 doesn't, it's not applicable to us.
Right.
Okay. And then my other question, looking down at the forecast for enrollment, like we dropped 20, but then that number stays the same, is that because you don't assume, you just keep it what it actually is?
Yeah, because we have the tuition program, so we can kind of, we have some control over our enrollment to a degree that we can go out and advertise and try to keep it consistent, hopefully, knock on wood. So the hope is that if we ever, have to use that, we could really try to make a push. We just haven't.
Well, I think it gets complicated because a Career Center student doesn't count as a full student. They count as half a student because they spend the other half of their time at the Career Center. So they count as a half of an FTE for the Career Center, a half for us. If a student goes College Credit Plus, they're our student by residence, but if they go 100% College Credit Plus, they count as 0 students in the enrollment with the state of Ohio. So you've got all those little nuances. So that's why you see, you're like, oh, we only have 700 and, or what Matt's showing, 680 students right now. No, we have more kids than that, but that's not necessarily the number of kids the state is counting. When they count, they're looking at what's the percentage of time they actually spend in your facility. So that takes all those kids out of the mix, which means the funding goes with those kids. So if 50% of our junior and senior class at the Career Center, the Career Center is getting 50% of our funding for those kids.
But once it drops to 680 and it stays at 680?
He's just guessing.
Okay,
It's just a guesstimate.
so it's not like we're not going to try and increase?
No, that's not what that
Trying to
means.
keep it
That's just,
conservative.
he's just putting a conservative number in there. And I think you'll see that when you look, if you get into the individual codes, he'll look and you'll see, oh, he's keeping the number the same. It's just a guess. It's a informed guess, but it will change.
Oh, yeah, yep.
What about the pre-K?
Pre-K doesn't,
Like the different.
yeah, they don't count in this, they're not counting that in the enrollment. Some, if you look at the CUP report, they'll count pre-K students in your total. But if you're looking at the Fair School Funding Plan, they won't count because that's a different pot of money. It's a different division of government. The Ohio Department of Children and Youth oversees pre-K, whereas the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce oversees K-12. So it's a different, even though they're on our campus, they're really a separate school, separate entity altogether.
From a few years back when that was being evaluated, it's one of the potential things to.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into notes. So if we go to page 10, before we start, and this deals with property taxes. We get our, taxes from Cuyahoga County, and our February advance. So we get advances at different times during the year. Our February advance was very low. And anybody that's been following our adventure with Cuyahoga County knows that it's not a good thing. So just for, perspective, we get anywhere between $2 to $3 million, maybe north of 3, historically in the month of February. Our amount that we're getting tomorrow, according to Cuyahoga County, is $735,000. So a lot less. So I emailed out a number of treasurers in Cuyahoga County, and I have that email here. I can share it if anybody would like as well. But I said, quick question. Our second advance is a lot smaller than usual. Just wanted to see if it's the same for everybody else. So Fairview Park's treasurer came out and said, same here, Matt. Last year we received 3.6 in February. Now it's only 1 million. Berea's treasurer said, same here, Matt, instead of 17 million last year, we are getting 3 million now. Also goes to point out, I think we all need to come together and start voicing our complete frustration with the county. This is ridiculous. Thankfully, I have cash, but this is a huge difference. Going down, Beechwood's treasurer, who I used to audit with, he goes, yes, our 2 advances have come in very low as well. Brecksville's treasurer, saying the same thing. Do we demand a meeting with Cuyahoga County to talk about it? Going down, Independence treasurer, she says, same, last year they had 2.2 million, this year it's $700-some thousand. Garfield Heights treasurer said, I went from 3 million to 1 million right now. We talked together and, I put together a letter and we sent that this morning to Cuyahoga County, which is up here on the screen. And it just talks about, Dear Cuyahoga County Fiscal Office Team, I hope you are doing well. I'm reaching out on behalf of a group of 10 school district treasurers who have been reviewing the February property tax distributions and have noticed that the amounts received are significantly lower than what has historically been distributed during the cycle. Given the impact that these distributions have on our district's cash flow, budgeting, and financial planning, we would appreciate the opportunity to meet with your team to better understand the factors contributing to the lower than usual payments this month. While we recognize that there may be timing issues and other administrative considerations involved, the lack of clarity has created concerns and frustrations among our districts as we work to maintain stable operations. Our goal is to have an open and constructive conversation so we can better understand the situation, receive any relevant updates, and discuss how we can improve communications and expectations moving forward. Please let us know your availability in the coming days for a discussion. We appreciate your time and partnership and look forward to working collaboratively towards a clear understanding of the issue. Thank you on behalf of participating school district treasurers. So it actually went to 11 because we have another one in Cuyahoga County that got back to me. And I didn't reach out to everybody yet. I just reached out to about 70% of the treasurers in Cuyahoga County just to see, but at least we're on the same footing. Now, what that footing is, we'll see all together, but we're not singled out for any type of error, just ourselves, which is good. So that was one of my initial concerns when I saw that yesterday. So,
Do you know if this is applying to other counties as well?
no, not yet.
One way or the other? Okay. Just
Um,
curious.
So, knowing that, as we jump into our notes, so on page 10, we have another row filled out in the middle that talks about our tax year. 25 came into play. And we have a yellow highlight for tax year 24. And we have a note at the bottom that we're going to see pretty consistently in this forecast. And it talks about in October of 2025, Cuyahoga County acknowledged and apologized for an approximate 90 million overstated valuation clerical error to tax year 2024's Class 2 valuation, which caused omitted tax collections of approximately $2 million owed to Cuyahoga Heights schools. So if we just, look at this in and of itself at the bottom half of the page, what we're seeing is for Class 2, and let's just look at Class 2, the bottom chart that we have here, column B. Back in 18, which was a reappraisal, the valuation was 206 million, then 205, 211, 229, but that has 3 asterisks. That's a triennial update year. Then we go to 234, 246. We have a huge jump to 336, but keep in mind, that was a reappraisal year, and everybody had been talking about these wild, crazy values that went up. So there was some logic there behind it. But we had gone through that adventure with Cuyahoga County. It took a while for the county to even acknowledge that there was an error. So we had to slowly say, no, there's something wrong here. And then we started peeling the layers of the onion back, and one by one, they acknowledged that this is the error, and this is the 90 million that should not have been there, and then this is the impact of the error. So we had to go through and get that resolved, as we did. But we actually go back down to, a commonplace number of 242 million. So as we keep continuing, page 11 talks about the different USAS codes at the top, the revenue codes that we would use. Talk about different types of levies, the ones that we look here primarily, regular operating, PI, combined, tax collection information. And I have this chart that I really like. It was hard to get in here, but I wanted to have in here. This is what I put together to send to Cuyahoga County to show them how much we get per levy per year. It was something that they could not do for us when I continued to ask. But it just gives us a sense of, this is our baseline and this is what we should be receiving for property taxes. So this history will always live here. If anybody ever wants to get back to find it, it's easy to find, and we can see year to year, even though it's very small, but you can increase it on your screen. Think of it that way. If it's on your screen, you can increase it. So it's not going to be super small. I know on paper it's hard to see. But that history is here. So if anybody ever wants to go back and see, we can look at that. And if we see the yellow columns, that just represents tax year 24, that they came out with 3 different effective rates for that year, which when we had our meeting with the mayors across the street, we had the fiscal officers from each of the villages, and we asked them, have you guys ever seen more than one in a year? And all of them said no. So this is, 2 is unique, but 3, I don't think anybody's ever seen 3, which we had last year. It just so happens to be that's the year when our new levy kicks into play. So it just so happened to work out. That's when our new money comes in, and it convoluted the math on it for us. So we didn't have like a historic base of, the new levy in place, so we could always go back and tell it to, say it to them very easily that, nope, we were getting that last year, we should be getting that this year. So it just aligned, the stars aligned perfectly for that one. Continuing on, page 12. Some good examples if anybody ever wants to go back to talk about millage. So we have an example of revenue per 1 mil, and then the example of the annual cost to a homeowner for an 8 mil levy for different house market values that we have in there, 100, 200, 300, 400,000. We have market value versus assessed value, House Bill 920. That still exists, right, Matt?
We think so.
We think so. Inside versus outside millage, effective millage rates, which I think everybody's become experts on right now. The next page, we talk about the 20 mil floor. These are school districts that were on the 20 mil floor in 2024, all in yellow, and that's changed. So the states changed the calculation on that aspect. So those schools potentially will see a loss in revenue, and that's Brooklyn, Garfield Heights, Independence, Maple Heights, North Royalton, and Parma. So continuing on, the next page, which is going to be page 14, this talks about our Cuyahoga County property tax issue, and we have a timeline in place. I just wanted to point out some interesting things. If we look at the bold item right here in the middle, and I have it up on the screen, it's kind of hard to see, but you can look on your paper. September 30th, I did ask the Budget Commission, were there any assessed valuation Board of Revision decisions, in parentheses, that reduced our 2024 total of $576 million. So it's class 1, 2, and public utility personal property rolled in. And then they came back and said, no, nothing substantial, just a $3 million market value change for Cleveland Electric Illuminating. So the county did not know about that issue at that point in time. Matt and myself met with legal counsel on October 1st. And that's really the day that, we had confirmed it with both of our legal counsels that they verified the map that we put together. And we kicked it into gear. Summarizes the issue here in yellow, and then we can see at the bottom, and that arrow with yellow is the apology from the county that we got on October 21st from the county fiscal officer, Michael Chambers, who said, I'm aware of the situation involving Cuyahoga Heights schools, and I apologize for the error and related stress that this has caused. So, continuing on, now we get to the solution. So our Board of Education back on November 6th, 2025, had our legal counsel send out a letter to the fiscal officer of Cuyahoga County regarding the clerical error and asking for omitted property taxes to be charged. So we asked for that. We asked for them to correct the error for tax year 25. We asked for them to advise the impacted Class 2 commercial taxpayers in writing of the error. And then we requested any other relief and assistance from the tax commissioner to charge the under-collected taxes. acknowledged they had a plan in place that they were gonna go to fix the problem. Who here thinks that they fixed the problem correctly, first go around? No. So, in this box here is essentially our legal counsel writing it. And I had him summarize the phone call with the county, because him and myself, and Matt was there too, I told legal counsel that it looks like, not only did they correct the issue, but they're over-correcting. We're over-collecting now. Not the 2 million that we were owed, but more. And he looks at that and he said, no way, can't be the case. Spent about 45 minutes with him, showing him everything, and then he was convinced of it. And then he started reaching out to the county, the people he knows. We called the county actually that day, the Budget Commission. We explained it, and we showed them that our new levies are essentially frozen at the max tax rate, which can't be the case. She didn't have any answers at that point in time. So then he circled back and talked to probably the second in command. And this summarizes that phone call. It's a good read. I don't want to read it here unless you guys want me to. But I can just, talk about the two highlighted items in yellow, which talk about double correcting and over collection. And the last sentence he has says, what this means, absent a correction prior to the issuing tax bills, is that the county will have to correct the second half tax year 2025 tax bills for the over collection for tax year 25. So our legal counsel notified the county. We did on the phone, but he did as well. So we've done our part notifying the county. I can't say we didn't because we had our legal counsel do it. And now it's on them to make sure we don't collect $1 more or $1 less. So when I saw that amount come earlier this week, kind of panicked because we should see a lot more. I was expecting a lot more than historically what we usually receive. And to see 700,000, I about, almost jumped out of the window and said, I've had it. I've had it. But at least everybody else is in the same boat, and all the treasurers are working together as a team. So, and again, it's not to throw anybody under the bus, and to say anything along those lines. It's just, I know that maybe they're transitioning with new people. It's very complex. There's a lot of things going in motion. So it's we'll work with them, and there's no we work with them in partnership, I guess we call it, as we go. So we have, yes?
Question.
Yep.
So border revision is doing that again now, right, where people can,
Yes.
so is there any concern with,
There
or
is.
we're staying on top of it, I guess, again, that you could have?
Yeah, there's always a concern there, so we just try to watch it as carefully as we can. So I don't think anybody knows our finances better than two of us, so I think when we look at it, we know what we're looking for, so which is good. So now our solution has become a two-step combination, because not only are they over-collecting, but they're doing a process, they're taking it from just omitted taxes to now that they've created a two-step solution process. So you have on one hand, omitted taxes being charged by Cuyahoga County. On the other hand, which is what they advise, their legal counsel at the Department of Taxation said they could not do, and they're doing it, is that they increase the effective rates to over-collect. So you have two things simultaneously occurring at the same time, which feeds into the over-collection. The one is what they said could not happen, where the Department of Taxation increases the effective rates, and they should have just charged omitted taxes. So they have a lot to sort through, but we pointed it out to them. And then just the bottom of this page talks about the January 8th email. Now this was sent out a day after Matt and myself and Mr. Burek met with the mayors of the three villages and their fiscal officers across the street. So all three mayors were there, Valley View, Cuyahoga Heights, and Brooklyn Heights, as well as all three fiscal officers. And we explained the situation to them first, so they could ask any questions. And Matt, did you want to summarize that meeting or talk about it or highlight anything from it? Or we got on the phone after, the mayors wanted to, do you want to?
I think they first appreciated the fact that we were able to provide the information because the county had reached out and provided any of that information to them. Second, I think their concern was who's going to break the bad news to all these Class 2 businesses. And that's where this statement was going to be provided, and they did. They followed through on it. They wanted to make sure it didn't affect Class 1, which is residential, which we did. And we even had David Seed call up Ms. Rocco. We got her on the phone so that they could ask her questions directly. So I think I'd like to think that they appreciated being pulled into the loop on it, because it affects the whole entire county, because it wasn't just, yes, it was a Valley View issue, but it affects a lot more than just the Cuyahoga Heights district, because with our effective rates being wrong, it affected the Cuyahoga Heights businesses, the Brooklyn Heights businesses, but also because you collect for the Metro Parks, and you collect for the county, and you collect for all these other entities that rely on an accurate tax bill. Everybody's affected by it.
So yeah, the mayors wanted to call the county, so we called the county right then and there at that meeting. And the county on the phone said, yes, mayors, we will issue something to everybody, and this is that. And they actually said they would do it the next day. And I thought there was no chance that would ever happen, but they did. So this is the email below that they sent out to the mayors and superintendents advising, just interesting, they said, be advised that the fiscal office identified a clerical error that was submitted to the state of Ohio. So it's okay. But it's, so, but yeah, that summarizes everything, that email.
He's very bitter
I know,
about that.
no.
Please be advised that Matthew Muccio found a clerical error. Because he found it. Otherwise, they would have just kept rolling with it.
So, rolling on with our forecast, we talked about House Bill 96, and there's a lot there with House Bill 96, isn't there, Matt? There's a lot.
Oh, my gosh.
It really is. You know, we could probably talk for an hour on House Bill 96, but we're not. I do want to highlight the bottom of page 16. This talks about the cash carryover. This does talk about our history and a small timeline that we have there of, you know, what had occurred. So it went from 25% to 30% to 50% down to 40%, which was the ending number. If we look here at the chart to the left, we see our cash carryover year by year, and we have been in the 90s for the, you know, since fiscal 19. There's an asterisk with fiscal 25 because we had that transfer out, but we have been operating, you know, very soundly. But the state came back and said, you know, from their first go, it should be 25%. Well, that's just ridiculous. I mean, we haven't been under 25% since fiscal 13 when the school was having financial problems. That's essentially what it means. You're operating, you know, with financial problems under 25%, which is what the state came out. Even under 40% is very hard. So I just wanted to put a past history out for what we had. You know, the next page just talks about all the veto overrides. If anybody wants to refer back, there was a lot there that Matt was giving a recap. What's very important on the bottom of page 17 are the new bills, the 5 new bills that DeWine signed into law at the end of, or in the middle of December. House Bill 124, 129, 186, 309, and 335 all have big implications on school district finances as they go. Continuing on, page 18 just talks about more figures and numbers that we have in place. Page 19, yeah, I do want to highlight something on page 18 before I go. Look at the difference between upper right-hand corner, class 2, between the two tax years. Look at those effective rates, the total tax rate. It's 27 for 24, and it's 42 in 25. That's the result of the state increasing our rates far beyond what they should be. And that's the overcollection that we're seeing right there from the one hand, not the omitted taxes that they sent out that email, but this is the effect of the jacked up effective rates that we see in place. So they're going to have to come down because they should not be that high. And that is a high tax rate too. Keep going on page 19. We just have more numbers. There's a lot here about breaking out the money that we receive for our levy, which is in the middle. So we have a lot of things going on where, you know, the first 2 rows talk about class 1 and 2. Class 1 is residential agriculture. Class 2 is commercial industrial on page 19. Then we have our subtotal. And then what I wanted to do is put in the amount of the increase for the effective tax rates that we would get then that subtotal, then talking about the amount for tips, permanent improvement levy, and homestead and rollback credits, and then our public utility personal property, which all adds up to that amount. So I really wanted to pull out the jacked up effective rate overpayment that we're getting, so we could see year to year what we should be getting for our taxes. And I have this collecting at a 95% rate there in yellow highlighted. But there is a lot of streams going on with our property taxes, with a lot of different inclusions in it. And then you compound that in the fact that they made an error, not just one error, but multiple. So it's really hard to explain it and map it out. So I tried to do it the best way I could for everybody, just for people to see where we pull our numbers from. And we went through this pretty thoroughly just to make sure it all looked reasonable as we go. Bottom half of the page talks about our tax rates in comparison with other school districts. I wanted to point out, look at us and look at Shaker. Big difference, isn't there? Shaker's at over 200 for their tax rate. We're at 43, which is the total of all of our levies. So to ever get close to where Shaker's at, we'd have to add levies year after year after year after year after year to climb up to get to that 200 tax rate that they have. So they have a lot of levies in place at Shaker. And then the next page, 20, is just prior year for comparison, but asterisk with that because of the error in that year. And then we get to our first roll-up of all of our numbers that make up the first line of the five-year, or the financial forecast. So we can see all these different lines, so class 1 and 2, delinquent property taxes, any settlements that we would have, and then 6 and 7, those rows would be on the left hand and the right hand, the correction that we had for that. And we have a total, and then that total is what makes it on line 1 of our 5-year forecast. So that's essentially how the numbers trace out. So we can see that fiscal year 26, our total of $11,995,095 is the amount on our 5-year forecast that we have. So that's just how it works.
Keep in mind if, I know we talked a little bit about it, if that proposed amendment gets on the ballot in 26 to eliminate property taxes, that's the amount of money you're going to have to figure out how to come up with as a society, especially the society in these 3 villages. You're going to have to come up with almost $12 million in revenue. That's what elimination of property taxes is going to do.
Mr. Muccio, real quick,
Yep.
on that table,
Yes.
you have omitted taxes and then collecting in, what, 26, 27? Is that what
Yes.
that is?
Yes.
It doesn't add up, is that up to 2 million those 2 years, I guess, is what you're thinking?
Right, so the way I accounted for that is it was $2 million in total that we had essentially that we're saying we're owed for the error. And if we go back to page 19, in yellow, highlighted in the middle, where it's the class 2 increased effective rates for the Ohio Department of Taxation, I'm saying that it's going to generate $1,666,000 estimated at 100% collection, because our baseline is $17 million for our taxes.
So the number's not really 2, it's 1. It's
So no, it
closer.
is 2. It is 2. I'll explain that.
Okay.
So this is the one hand. The one hand is going to generate 100% collection, 1.6 million. Think of it that way. The other hand is going to generate 400,000. That's what it should be to get to the 2 million. So on the one hand, we're looking at the 1.6 million, and we're thinking we're going to have 95% collection with that amount coming back. So that's $1,535,082. And then coming back to page 21, at the bottom for my explanation and methodology, we have the higher effective rates by the Department of Taxation will generate that 1.6 at 100% collection, or estimated to be 1.5 at a 95% collection rate. So half collected in 26, the other half in 27.
The tax year splits 2 fiscal years. That's why you broke it up that way.
Because I don't know, I'm thinking it's just the tax year, and we'll see how it all pans out. I don't want to vote too much. And then the other hand is the omitted taxes. Now, what we should get is about $400,000 for that, because the 2 million in total. They've over-collected, they have to figure that out. So the 400,000, we're thinking that's at 100%. Let's take that at 95%, which is 380,000, and then split it in half. That's 190. 190,000. So the 190 collected, and one half and the other half that we have.
Thank you.
Yep. And then carrying on, we come to our second line in the 5-year forecast, tangible personal property tax, and we're making good time as we go. This talks about all of our public utilities in the middle, railroads, electric companies, natural gas that we would have. Continuing on, this is all just the same, but I do want to point out on page 23, look at our values as they have increased in the middle for public utility personal property in the pink. So in column C, we went from 73 million in 18 to 96 million in 25. So we've climbed up significantly all those years. Continuing on, this is collected at the full tax rate that we have. There's no effective rate for this. And then page 24, 25, 26, the same calculations I have. 27 talks about what makes it on the 5-year forecast, or excuse me, the financial forecast. And those are the figures that we have in place. The difference between maybe fiscal year 23, 24, 25, and the large increase we see for 26 is the new levy that was passed. So that increases our amounts of what we see there, that 8 mil combined levy that we have. And I'm just a little, reserved in the estimating, so, maybe I could go a little higher in tax year 27, 28, 29, but I did scale that back. And that's the last sentence I have on this page. It talks about fiscal years 27 through 29 cautiously estimates a value not going below tax year 24, or approximately 93 million, with a collection percentage of 97%, even though the paragraph before that, the big one, talks about why it's historically been 100%. So I'm just kind of putting a bubble in there, and I think it's going to be more favorable, but I don't know. Continuing on, we talk about state aid. And Matt, where are we ranked in the state with our state aid? Bottom?
Well, we received the 4th or 5th lowest because our district is wealthy because of the businesses. We have a per pupil valuation of $808,000 per pupil.
Yep. So we're bottom 5 in the state, so we're right there with Put Bay and Kelly's Island, and Independence is down there too. So if the state cuts and eliminates property taxes, we get bottom 5 in the state.
That's determined by the Fair School Funding Plan. It's not everybody is funded equally. They're funded fairly, so to speak, and there's a lot of inputs that go into that. I think the biggest thing is that the Fair School Funding Plan is not being funded at its full capacity. And by fiscal 27, the state is only going to be contributing 32% of what they should be contributing to public schools. And so that burden goes to the property taxpayers. And schools are pitted to be the enemy of this whole thing, so.
And we have a whole history on page 28 of just the state aid. So I tried to highlight in black with white lettering from the 70s, so as it goes. And each state budget is a 2-year budget, so that's why we see 2 years combined on a lot of that. On page 29 is going to be House Bill 96, which is the fiscal 26-27 biennial budget. Talk about our USAS codes as we go. I'll continue on, so that's page 29. Page 30 just has all the definitions for the funding that we receive from the state. What's new? It's going to be at the bottom of page 30. So this is new for House Bill 96. Would be those 3: base funding supplement, enrollment growth supplement, and performance supplement that we see. If we flip to page 31, we see our amounts in yellow. It's the most recent foundation settlement. That's how the money comes in to us. And just compare with prior that we have. Performance supplement towards the middle bottom. It's 43,756, so that's, from that one bill, that's how we're performing as a district, so that's good. Continuing on to page 32, we have our roll-up, and then all of the items. So for state support, I'm hedging a little, and I put 875,000, but there's a little bubble there. Casino tax, we get about 50,000, and that's what makes up the 925,000 that we see on our financial forecast for that line in fiscal year 26. We have in place. So I do want to point out at the bottom of page 32. So this is important. I'm going to kind of start in the middle of the page after the large paragraph. But during our January 20th, 2020 Board of Education meeting, and we checked it together, so that's the correct date, it was that far back. The board adopted a resolution opposing the state of Ohio's EdChoice Scholarship Voucher Program. Then in fiscal year '22, let's skip over that. During the July 10th, 2023 Board of Education meeting, the board approved participation in the Ohio Coalition for Equity and Adequacy for Ohio's, of school funding lawsuit opposing the proposed EdChoice voucher program. So we did that resolution back in 2023. And we joined, so that was us joining the lawsuit, spending school money on a lawsuit to fight that. And then most recently, Matt, I wasn't sure if you wanted to highlight this, what came out February 3rd, 2026.
Yeah, Jamie Callender, Lake County Republican, in the bill basically states that if a school district is part of this lawsuit, if this bill were to go through, become law, they would deny you state support. They would withhold your state funding and put it in escrow until you were no longer part of the lawsuit. And Jerry Serino came out yesterday. Jerry Serino is our senator. We had him here at our school back in September. He says, I think it's wrong. I think one of the great powers that we have as a legislature is the power of the purse, and I think we should use that more frequently. So he supports this. So we'll see. We'll see. Question?
Serino thinks it's wrong. What do you,
Serino thinks it's wrong that school districts can use public funds to join
Oh,
a
okay.
lawsuit against the
He's
state
agreeing
legislature.
with-
Oh, he agrees.
that's
He
that's what it
agrees.
sounded like.
Yeah, no,
When
he
you said wrong,
agrees.
I wasn't sure what the wrong.
No, he thinks it's wrong that school districts are part of a lawsuit.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So,
So we only pay a couple dollars per student.
$2.
Right. I think we can raise that. If it passes.
Yeah, I mean, well, but they would withhold $1.1 million. That's what we receive from the state, ideally, right? That's like,
No, I'm just saying we can raise that privately.
we could. Yeah. Exactly. That's what we were saying, take the money.
I
What is
think
that,
every school.
like $1,500?
Yeah,
I think every school is against that.
exactly.
Continue on, so page 33. Now we're moving to the next row in our forecast, restricted state aid. So it's just a few lines that we have here. Disadvantaged pupil impact aid, career tech, gifted, English learners, base cost, student wellness and success. Descriptions are there. Page 34 talks about threshold cost reimbursement. Mr. Burek does a great job with that. Page 35 has our roll-up, or excuse me, no, it doesn't, it just has comparison. We talk about high-quality instructional materials that Mr. Young was talking about, science of reading at the very bottom. Page 36, that's our roll-up now. And then we see the amounts that make it into our financial forecast. So in column fiscal 26, 177,478 is the amount that we see on our forecast that we have in place there. Continuing on, page 37 talks about our homestead and rollback credits. The state is doing a change here, so there's it's kind of a lot, but we'll talk about this as we get to the end part. Or if we stay on that page 37, just want to highlight the last paragraph that we have. So House Bill 186 that was signed into law December of 2025 changes how property tax rollback works by gradually increasing the owner-occupied credit rollback from the current 2.5% to 15.38% by 2029, while phasing out the 10% rollback on non-business credit residential property. The state will continue to reimburse local governments and schools for the cost of the rollback. I'll highlight this more towards the end, make it maybe a little easier to see. The next page, on page 38, talks about our TPP phase-out. We lose $213,320 every year as a result of it. The amount that we're getting this year is $874,131, and our cumulative loss to date is $19.3 million. That's a very large figure. Had we had, that's monumental, isn't it, Pam?
Yeah,
Um,
say the least.
yeah,
It's an entire fiscal year.
Right, page 39 talks about the roll-up, and I kind of have that arrow in place showing the effect. So they're saying that that 10% non-business credit, and look at column fiscal year '26, so if we add up line 2 and line 3, that's 360,000. And the state's now looking to phase that one out, so line 2. And it's essentially going to be combined now with line 3 because it's going from 2.5% to 15 point, I think it's 38%. So we're thinking we're still going to see 360,000 provided from the state, but a shift in how they're doing it. However, I do have, a couple negatives put in on row 4 because they're eliminating the rollback for residential property that is leased to renters or otherwise not used as the owner's primary residence. And we do have a lot of leased property. We don't really know the effect of what's going to happen with that, so we're going to have to watch it very carefully. But I just wanted to throw some numbers in there for everybody to see. Continuing on, we have all other income on page 40. Talk about our investments and the monthly average yield percentage. On page 41, we talk about our tuition program at the top. Pricing, we're projected to bring in $813,000 for our tuition program, almost the same as what we get from the state. Bottom of the page talks about what we receive from Port Place students. Page 42 talks about our tips, and we had legal counsel come last year to explain our tips that we have in place, and we're guesstimating that that's going to be approximately $270,000 for those. The real estate reimbursement, bottom half of the page, we received $151,000, so that's where in every county, a certain percentage of property taxes based on a formula set by law is placed in a fund to cover real estate-related costs, including paying for appraisals and panels that decide taxpayer challenges to property values. The counties return leftover money after the state-required appraisals every 6 years and updates every 3 years. The last time we received money was back in 2019. That was $50,000. So we had received $151,000 for that. We have our roll-up on page 43. And I just want to highlight rows 4 and 5, our interest on investments. In fiscal '23, that's about 700 some thousand. In fiscal '24, we went over $1 million with the combination of those two lines. And then we were able to do it again in fiscal '25, and that was that game, in essence, that I was trying to really get us over $1 million. I was happy when that happened. This year, maybe I'll try to get us at 800,000, I think. So, and that's, that line that we see there. Again, tuition's a large revenue driver for our district that we have in place. 44 is just, small revenue items. I'll skip over that. 45, and I didn't change any of the expenditures from our last forecast. So they are all the same, all the expenditures. So I'll kind of go a little bit quicker through this. So 45 starts personnel services. So that's starting the expense side of the financial forecast. So this is line 3.010, personnel services. Salaries, think of it as salaries that we have for people, teachers here. Continuing on, page 46 talks about all the different object codes that are included. Page 47 is just map of all of our pay periods that we have in place. 48 is just a comparison between fiscal '24 and '25. 49 is another comparison between '25 and anticipated '26. Page 50 is our roll-up. Our largest costs are going to be object code 111, which is salaries for certified, as well as non-certified object code 141. Supplementals, those are a big cost for us. So that's 113 and 143, coaching. If we combine those two lines in 26 or 25, that's over $600 some thousand for supplementals. That's a high cost that we have. Retirements, we pay out severance. That's on object code 132 for certified and 162 for non-certified. And then we can see our grand total at the bottom, and that's the amount that makes it onto our financial forecast that we have in place. Carrying 51 just talks about the methodology and how we arrive at those. 52 starts the next row, which is retirement and insurance benefits. We're with Suburban Health Consortium. The top page talks about some unique aspects, important aspects along the way. The middle to bottom talks about our pricing year to year that we have in place on page 52. Page 53 talks about the USAS account codes that we have in place and some Bureau of Workers' Compensation premiums and refunds that we get back. Page 54 talks about comparison between 24 and 25. And then we have our roll-up on page 55. The biggest line is going to be in the middle for insurance benefits, medical, drug, HSA, dental, and vision that we have. It's 20% from prior year, the increase, and that accounts for any type of mid-year rate increase by Suburban Health because our consortium has not been doing the greatest. There's approximately 17 schools in that consortium, so just hedging it there in case that's another bubble. The worst were to happen that we have. Continuing on, page 56 just talks about certain aspects of the methodology in dental, vision, medical, and prescription drug. Page 57 talks about purchase services that we have in place. These are all the different object codes. So like 418 is going to be our professional and legal services. I could start quizzing everybody if we go around different object codes. I won't do that now. Next year. But I think I pretty much have them down memorized. George, you got them yet memorized?
No. I don't memorize it. I just go back to the
Yep.
forecast and
At some point, it just,
They all changed. Some of them
They
changed, some of
have
them
been changing,
changed.
yeah, a lot, some of them changed. Page 58 talks about our services with the ESC of Northeast Ohio. Carrying on, now we talk about the budget. So when anybody utilizes anything in our general fund, all the budgets are here for everything. So people refer back to the forecast, and then they go to create a requisition, and then they have to choose the account coding. Again, it's, on page 59, that's going to be object code 410 at the very top for professional and technical services. All these accounts exist in our system with all those budgets in fiscal 26. So if somebody wants to do number 2, band uniform cleaning, that budget is $1,000. We can see what we spent in prior year. If we dug out old forecasts, we can see what was spent maybe 24, 23, 22, 21 to get that historical cost analysis. And, we can shift from line to line. So if we're not using as much band uniform cleaning but buying maybe more textbooks, we can pull out a certain portion of that money and shift it there. But anybody using anything, this is what I have them go by, and we all go by. So everything's organized. So that's page 59. Just know that, number 23, this is a result of the USAS manual doing there's new coding and there's new function codes because there's a 15% admin cost that we're mindful of. So there's a lot there. So some of it you're going to see shifting around this time, but a year from now, that's all going to make its way out or so. So that's page 59, page 60. So we can really see, we spend a lot of money on 46, 47, 48. Those are those ESC that we just looked at previously, all those positions that we have. Continuing on, page 61. We have our health service contract with PSI on 59. On 67 would be our legal costs, our legal counsel. Architects below that. Our shredding is going to be 77. Our board docs, what we're using for board meetings, that's on 78. Carpet cleaning, garbage removal at the bottom, 80 and 81. The next page starts our maintenance and repairs, 423 object codes that we have in place. And some of the budgets we don't touch, so it's on a need and want. So need we have to account for and budget for. Wants, let's be reasonable and not spend a lot of money on the wants that we have in place. 63, it's more items in the budget separated by elementary school and the combined middle school with the high school, just makes it easier. 64, again, trying to point out the high costs. On 146, we have our copier lease agreement. It's pretty sizable. On 144, that row, that's our insurance for the whole district. That's our property insurance. It's 120,000, give or take, so that's a sizable amount in the budget. Next page, 65, we see some professional development expenditures there for staff. Carrying on to 66. At the bottom of the page, we start seeing our amounts for utilities, electric, water, sewer on 207, 208, and 209. Next page, 67. A lot of the 470 object codes deal with, outplacement of students that perhaps we have. College Credit Plus is there. Carrying on, we see our roll-up on page 68. And that's what makes it on our 5-year forecast. So column fiscal 26, 3,517,657 is the amount that we see on our 5-year forecast as we go.
Can I
Yep.
just jump in real quick?
Definitely.
He mentioned that we have maybe some higher costs with our county services and special education. Intentional effort was made, George, how many years ago? 8 years ago? To have resource rooms that allowed students to go to school here rather than being outsourced to another school district. And if you looked at that one line on page 67, 219, one student can cost $100,000 to outsource. So I think when we first came here, there were 8 to 10 students outsourced, and those costs were still around $100,000 back then. So, $800,000 was then repurposed so that the students could be educated here at the school, and it's not at the same cost. It's cheaper to do it here. So there is a little bit of a trade-off there that say, well, let's just reduce our county costs. Well, if you do reduce county costs, that may mean you'll have to use other school entities in the area to be able to provide an appropriate education for a student's IEP by federal law. So it is a little bit of a trade-off. So I wanted to say that before we got too far away from it. I think we're saving money by having.
In addition to saving money, the bigger impact is that if we're doing things with students here, and we hire a teacher, or we hire related service providers to do things, they're not just servicing one student when they're at Cuyahoga Heights. So in our place, we get no benefit of scale to that service that we're paying for, where here, that person might be servicing 50 students. So all of a sudden, like, there's other benefits that are going on and support that are in place for additional students.
Not to take more time, but some people have asked, well, we have a tuition program. What percentage of our special education population is coming through the tuition program? And you looked at that. What was that?
It's around 4%.
4%. So 33% of our student body is tuition right now, but only 4%.
No, it's 4% of special needs students, so 4% of.
Well, but what I'm saying is if you look at proportionality, because in special education, they talk about, are you disproportionate or proportionate? I think that's not coming through our tuition program. It's resident students, which is okay. I mean, it's okay, but people have asked about your tuition program, and by the way, you cannot discriminate through your tuition program with a student with disabilities unless it creates a hardship for your district for services that you just cannot provide because you don't have
That's one of
facilities.
the things, like if they're coming from a local public school district, whichever he is, and their district is responsible for providing them with education. So if there's a student who lives in Independence and they qualify for additional services that we don't offer here, they would still get those services. So we're not denying any services.
Right.
They have that right through their district, and the district always works to get them the
Right.
appropriate services. We have a lot of great people in the surrounding districts, part of the First Ring, the ESC of Northeast Ohio, so there's a lot of great special needs programs in our area, so there's nobody who's going without just because they don't live in Cuyahoga Heights, if that was the case.
Didn't mean for the aside there, but I wanted to connect two different parts of
Very important.
your budget together for things that
But that's, and the other component with that
we've
I don't know if
asked
it's noted
about.
in the notes, or even doing something within a district with a lot of services associated. If they don't go here next year, we're obviously gonna have a cost, we're not gonna spend money just to spend it. So we would give a rationale saying, okay, this student graduated from the specialized program, that's no longer being paid for by the district. So then, after they first tell us that we failed, they will come and do a correction and note that there was a rationale that we were able to, provide documentation of why there was a change.
And then we have our roll-up on page 68. Again, we looked at that, how it makes it in our forecast. Continuing on, page 69 talks about supplies and materials, so 500 object codes. Page 70, supplies for elementary school and middle school. Page 71 is going to be high school. Page 72, office supplies, health and hygiene at the bottom. Like bathroom supplies on line 73 and district cleaning supplies on line 74, 22 and 20,000. 73 starts software material. That's shifting though, so we're going to see a lot of zeros, and it's going to make its way to a different object code. 74 talks about more computer supplies, other general supplies that we have. Bottom of that page. Page 75 talks about textbooks. We do have some expenses budgeted this year for textbooks. I think we're going to see some sizable ones come from Matt.
Yeah, our math curriculum at the elementary school is expiring. Our middle school English curriculum is expiring. And then we have some others coming along the way. So when those licenses expire, if you don't renew them, you lose access to a lot of the online resources. Plus, we use a lot of consumables or workbooks year to year, so you have to buy new workbooks as well. So this is the year that they all expire. It feels like I've got like 6 of them expiring.
Skipping on, page 76 just deals with more supplemental textbooks. The next page, on page 77, we have electronic textbooks, College Credit Plus, and then electronic instructional materials. That's the shift from the software, so 527, we see a lot of that. 78 talks about library books. Maintenance of supplies would be object code 570 that we see there. Bottom of page 79, if we go through there, we're going to see motor vehicles, the 580 object code. We have our roll-up on page 80. So our estimated amount of $822,660 is the amount that makes it into our forecast, and all the other items in that line correspond as well. Page 81 is just capital outlay. I'll kind of go quickly through here. 82, 83, and 84 are just, all of those expenses just, filtered out, and we see our total. 85 talks about other objects that come into play, so these budgets are used for any of these items that we have. 86, 87, 87 is the roll-up. 88 talks about set-asides. We don't have to necessarily worry about that anymore for the permanent improvement fund, so we're not transferring anything out. But on page 88, if we look at the bottom of that, we can see that we do transfer out from our general fund $100,000 to athletics and $50,000 to food service. So, just making note of that. Page 89 just talks about any type of advances that we would have for grant funds, and we watch our grant funds pretty closely, so not much there that we worry about. And then just encumbrances on page 90. So those are bills yet to be paid that when we close the fiscal year, so orders that we have made. And 91 just talks about best practices and helpful hints of the forecast. But otherwise, that's everything in a nutshell. Now, the forecast is only the general fund, so no permanent improvement funds are included in here, so just the general fund.
Yeah, so people ask, where's the money for the roofs or the billboard, digital signs out at the highway, where's all that money? That's not included in this. It's not required.
And we're not voting on it tonight, so take your time. If you have any questions, let me know, but we would look to vote on this at our next board meeting on the 17th.
question, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Well, I was just, a follow-up with that, is there a similar document for the permanent improvement plan like this?
Not like this.
Not like this.
We have it on a spreadsheet,
We do. Yep,
and then we have the document we create with the BEST committee.
yep.
So, I mean, we can,
It's a different looking document, but it's still, you know.
yeah, and I would have no problem if you think it would be beneficial to do a presentation. It's not uncommon for us to do presentations at these meetings, the work sessions, not the students of the month, because that's a long night. But at the work sessions, which is the first meeting every month, if you would like to see certain topics addressed that you feel would benefit the board to be informed on a little bit more in depth, we could do that. We could talk about our permanent improvement, the funds that we're using. We could talk about the projects that we have already completed and where some of the other projects fall in relation to that and how the mechanism works. So we just, a week and a half ago, was it last week? Last week, a group of about 6 or 7 of us,
That's in the
we
school
worked
plan.
together on there's a spreadsheet for everything, right? We have spreadsheets for that, so, but we would be more than happy to do a formal presentation at, a March meeting or an April meeting, if that's something you feel would be beneficial. Just make the request as a future item that you would like to see, and we can do that.
I have a quick question on the expenditures
Oh,
real
yeah.
quick. I noticed like from 24 to 25 with the $4 million that was moved,
Yes,
it jumped up the expenditures, right, from 17, if you're looking at line 5.05,
yes,
from 17 to 22.
yes,
A lot of it's that 4 million that was moved to the
Yes.
PI.
yes.
But then expenditures kind of stay in that 21, $22 million range.
Yep.
What's the, I guess, insurance? Is that what the increase is from previous years?
Yeah, line 3.010, that goes up quite a bit. Line 3.020 goes up quite a bit. Line 3.3, purchase services. So all of those lines go up quite a bit. So that's essentially, why we have 4 million the one year, and, it kind of stays the same because all of those expenses go up. But again, it's kind of accounting for worst-case scenarios in a lot of those expenses. We're actually coming in shallow on all of them. So we were just analyzing it the other day. If I go to, if I'm looking at board docs and go back to our January 21st board meeting up on the screen, click into here, click into our financials. If we were to click on, I'll go to personnel services. So that's on our screen right now. Let's see if I can go all the way. But right now, we're at 47% expenditures, and 50% is where, make this a little bigger. So 50% is where we would just naturally be if we were on the course for all of that. So we're coming in at 47%. So we're lower here in our personnel expenditures, that 47% all the way over there. And it's the same for the others. So we're coming in shallow on all of our expenses. So this is our insurance benefits retirement. So 50% again as of December, because that's the middle of the year, halfway point. So 50% up there. And then we can see, if I go out, we're at 42.5%. And each of these rows accounts for where that percentage is. So our biggest one, we're at 43% for our health insurance, and that 43% is right there. So even though, we're hedging, we're putting a large budget, doesn't mean we have to hit it. So we try to say needs and wants. So, let's cover all the needs that we have to have for the students and staff. For the wants, let's be reasonable and not, no Corvettes or anything like that. And we're not gonna hire Tom Cruise for the high school play. It's just not in the budget.
Yeah, I can't find my document, but I was tracking hiring that's occurred since right before I became superintendent, and then in the 2 years since. When somebody retires, do we replace it? And we replace it, what was the salary differential? And I want to say at the start of the school year, we were around $800,000 in savings with our hiring moves. Some positions we didn't replace. So for example, our science department went from 4 teachers down to 3 teachers. Others we replaced. when we replaced Karen Bergen in our library with Mrs. Meadwell. You know, we saved a large salary differential there, but then we didn't replace the library assistant position. So not only did we get the salary differential, then we didn't replace the library assistant position that we had. So I've got to find that document, get it updated, but we're still pretty much hovering between $700,000 and $800,000, I think. And if nobody had retired and the staff had stayed the same going into the 24-25 school year, you'd be paying almost $1 million more. So that's maybe why you're seeing things start to come in a little bit lower, because we're trying to, you have to operate at a certain capacity if you want the results that we've come to expect, and you want to be able to maintain the buildings and do bus routes and all the things that make us, you know, unique and special. But we're trying to figure out how to be as efficient as possible. They talk about school consolidation, you know, has come up, or consolidation of leadership, for example. We're already consolidated. You know, I was looking a couple years ago, just George and I together at Westlake are, you know, $900,000 in salaries between, you know, if you take our positions and look at just a Westlake. So we're already consolidated. We're doing a lot of the things. You know, we do business manager, for example. He's part business manager, I'm part business manager, he's part business manager. Sometimes Hartman comes in and he's part business manager. Sometimes Jim Zerbola is part of that, but we're already consolidated, trying to do things as efficiently as possible. And I feel like we do a really, really excellent job of at least communicating. We think we're communicating on the right things, but we talk every day. It just, there's not a day that goes by that there aren't conversations about our operations. I'm sorry.
And I know that, and it's appreciated. We can see it.
That's all I have, so, thank you.
Well done.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that was our presentation, section 4. Now, section 5, treasurer's business.
And we pulled 5 and 6.
We pulled 5, we pulled 5 as well. I know we pulled 6, okay. I forgot, we pulled 5 as well.
And we have no other comments either, so we're good.
Okay. So we're into section 7, which is executive session. I hereby move that the board adjourn to executive session pursuant to ORC section 121.22G1 for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, and/or compensation of employees and/or officials of the school district. May I have a second, please? Second. Okay. I thought I heard a rumble over there. Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Suchaki?
Aye.
Mr. Rossi?
Aye.
Mrs. Decker?
Aye.
Ms. Bejeska?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. It is 7:03. We are adjourning into executive session. Are we,
You're going to go downstairs into my old office.
okay, we're going to change venues. Can I say no action will be taken?